This is Rep's Adonis Cable Tower, which not only functions as a lat pull down and low row, but also has functional trainer capabilities because of the movable center trolley. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen something like this. We've had options like Prime Single Stack for years, and the amount of cable towers that try to do a little bit more than your traditional lat pull down and low row has been steadily growing. Where Rep stands out is not only in offering multiple pulley ratios for the lat pull down and low row versus the center trolley, which we'll get to, but what makes this special is the star of the show, the Pegasus Seat. You see, the Adonis is the cable tower, which can be used as a standalone machine like we've done, or integrated into other rack setups because of its modular build. But the Pegasus, which is technically its own separate product, makes things a whole lot more interesting. But before we get to what I like and my criticisms, because I do have to call out Rep a few times on this one, it's time for me to ask you to subscribe after talking for 1 whole minute, like I've actually earned it. And since I'm being needy, if you enjoy our content and want to support us, then please use our links if you make a purchase from any of the companies we talk about, because we'll get a small commission, which is how we keep this channel going. Because even though Rep sent me this for free for the review, we do purchase a lot of the equipment that gets featured on this channel. Let's start this one off by breaking down the Adonis so you can see how it compares to other options out there, because this thing isn't cheap. Depending on how you build it, as a plate-loaded, selectorized, with or without the base, or the Pegasus Seat, you're talking anywhere from $2,100 to nearly $3,000 shipped. To put that in perspective, Rogue's upcoming CTM1's most expensive build is actually a few dollars cheaper and functionally similar. There's also more traditional lat pull down and low row setups like Bells of Steel's plate loaded or selectorized units that run from $900 to $2,000 respectively. The Adonis, though, is a little different from everything else. We've got the hybrid version, which means we've got a 210-pound selectorized weight stack, but can also use the weight horns or integrated band pegs to load it up to its maximum weight capacity of 450 pounds, which is what my typical lat pull down and low row looks like. The plate-loaded version has the same weight capacity, and depending on the thickness of your plates, you can get 3 or 4 sets of 45s on these 6-inch weight horns, which will be more than enough weight for the vast majority of people. One of the clever things Rep's done with the Adonis is set the lat pull down and low row pulley ratio to 1:1, but the trolley to 2:1. That means with the high and low pull points where you'd want access to a lot of weight, whatever you put on that stack is what you're pulling. So if it's set to 200 pounds, it's 200 pounds. The trolley's 2:1 ratio means you're pulling half the weight. That's important because with functional trainer exercises like a delt raise or flies, you want smaller weight increments and a lower starting weight because you're probably not doing flies with 200 pounds. With the 2:1 ratio, you've got a starting weight of 10 pounds and then 5-pound increments. So 10, 15, 20, and so on. Whereas with the lat and low row, you're going to start at 20 pounds and then jump 10 pounds at a time. Luckily, Rep was kind enough to us meatheads who can't do math and provided both weight increments on the stickers. Of course, they also include a pair of 1 1/4 and 2.5 pound adder weights so you can micro-load your lifts, which sounds logical, right? Wouldn't everyone do that? Well, one of my major problems with Fringe's Dane rack was it started at 15 pounds and jumped 10 pounds at a time, and they didn't include adder weights, making some exercises difficult, if not impossible. That 2:1 ratio gives you twice the cable travel of the 1:1, which will allow you to use the trolley for anything, because with 9 feet of cable to work with, you're not going to be running out of space. Not to pick on Fringe's Dane too much, but it's another good example, because with their 1:1 pulley ratio, we ran into issues during some exercises. The Adonis is built to the same specs and dimensions as Rep's PR5000 rack. So it's using 11 gauge thick 3-inch by 3-inch tubing with 1-inch holes and 2-inch hole spacing, which makes it big, beefy, and modular. You can store your attachments on it, and even the Pegasus Seat, though I'd probably take the leg rollers off to store them, but the fact that you can take the leg rollers off pretty easily because they're screwable, because they screw off, Is this a bad time to talk about how much I like these leg rollers? Anyway, it's another clever touch and shows Rep's attention to detail. You can bolt this to your Rep or other metric racks, add storage to it, or test your marriage and buy two of them to link together, though that probably wouldn't make for a great rack because the front of this is fairly cluttered, which is one of the things I noticed when I tried using it for dips. Yeah, it'll work, it's stable, but depending on your height or if you're using something like a dip belt, the upper storage hooks and low row mechanism may get in the way, making this the part where I say, I think this is a very well done product, but I also think Rep's done a little bit of overselling. I've called out Bells of Steel, Rogue Fitness, and countless others, so Rep is going to get the same treatment. Rep has a few pics on their listing of them using the low row for upright pulls, but doing that would cause the cable to rub on the bolt that keeps it in place, which over time would wear down the sheathing, and it also introduces a ton of friction into the movement. You can pull up at an angle up to about 45 degrees without issue, which means you can sit on a decline bench instead of your floor during low rows. Now, none of that is to say you can't do vertical pulls on the Adonis. With the trolley, you can pull from just about anywhere at any angle without issue. It spins 180 degrees and goes from about 78 inches at its max down to, well, about 16, but you're gonna have to take my word for it because the seat's in the way. And as you can see, it's easy to adjust with just one hand. It's essentially a beefed up Ares and Athena trolley. So you still got the knurled handle, UHMW sleeve to keep the uprights from getting scuffed up, and it's a time-tested design that's worked well for years. The only time I have had issues with the trolley is when trying to use a long strap for something like curls. I couldn't quite get a full range of motion, but I could easily remedy that by standing on something, or I could use just literally any other carabiner attachment because they'll all work on this. Since I'm already kind of beating on Rep here, this is probably a good time to call them out for the assembly, but let me just say I'm being critical and thorough because I'd rather you buy this and know exactly what you're getting than me get a commission and you resent me for misrepresenting it. And listen, you do not have to use my link. Use literally anyone's. It'll help them out immensely. This is a pretty complex machine that you have to put together, and I've got no issues there, but I'm not sure why Rep is saying it'll take 2 hours to assemble, because it took us about 5, and I've done dozens of builds like this. None of my criticisms are deal breakers. I just think that by tweaking their listing, that would set expectations a little more accurately, because after that long build and finding some scuffs and missing powder coat, I wasn't exactly happy with how this whole thing started out. That being said, I genuinely really like the Adonis and Pegasus. The build quality and attention to detail on both are outstanding. The metallic black powder coat looks great with the stainless steel accents. Integrating storage into the shrouds is a nice touch, though I do think they probably could have taken better advantage of all this space, because you can never really have too many holes or options on where to put things, and it would have been nice if they included more than 2 hooks for this much money, but this is just your standard pegboard, so you won't be left wanting for options. It also comes with a fully knurled lap pull-down bar, straight bar, and 2 of their steel D handles, which are all finished in hard chrome and have a passive but clean knurling that provides enough grip without chewing up your hands. My favorite addition, though, is the adder weights. These are really cool with the Grecian pattern worked in, and like with the attachments, they're very well done and are a good, if not tiny, example of the overall quality of the Adonis. This thing is sleek with the shrouds, the logos aren't overdone, and clearly Rep spent a ton of time refining things on this. The aluminum pulleys they're using have great bearings in them, so the entire thing is very smooth, though it's not as simple of a system as an Athena, which is a bit more of a minimalist approach to a cable system. And as you add more complexity, moving parts, pulleys, whatever, that affects the pull, the feel of the machine. So I don't think it would work well if you combined this with an Athena. It also means this has a fairly deep footprint at about 55 inches, counting the adjustable telescoping and removable footplate. But Rep really couldn't have condensed it much more because you've only got so much space to work with, especially with the guide rod system that keeps the internal pulleys from twisting, which is another detail that you don't often see on this type of machine. So overall, the Adonis is very good, but as I mentioned, when you add the Pegasus, that's when it becomes special. Honestly, this probably deserves its own dedicated review, so let me know in the comments if that's something you want to see, but this is a very versatile piece. Yes, it does a great job holding you in place during pulls because these big leg rollers are comfortable, stable, and easily adjust to 6 different heights with a single pop pin, but it's a lot more than just a seat. By removing the rollers or even the handle entirely, I can create more space for things like incline rows, and it's highly adjustable. I think there's something like 28 different angles and positions it can do, which means I can use it for all kinds of different exercises and variations. Not only that, but I can adjust the seat height without ever removing it from the Adonis, which means it works for my height while also making it much easier for my very pregnant wife to use this without having to lift it. Because at nearly 50 pounds, I'm not going to tell you it's light, but I'm also not going to tell you I don't curl it every time I pick it up, because if you can't curl it, is it really a piece of gym equipment? Now, I know what you're saying. Gluck, I don't have a Rep rack. Can I put it on Rogue's or someone else's? First off, that's a really odd thing to ask 12 minutes into a Rep review, but yes, you can. Rep's added a screw on the side that pushes onto a UHMW pad so you can place this onto another 1-inch rack and then tighten it down if it's loose. They're also coming out with a 5/8-inch version of the Pegasus, once again showing Rep's thought out all the details on this, like the storage hole for the mag pin when you're not using the seat, or the added lip on the underside of the seat that makes taking the Pegasus on and off much easier. Rep has mentioned they're developing a dual leg roller to hold you in place if you don't want to spend the $400 on the Pegasus, but these were designed in tandem, and the Adonis is much more versatile with the Pegasus. So let's break down where that leaves the Adonis versus the competition. I think it's an upgrade over Bells of Steel's selectorized lat low because even without the Pegasus, the Adonis trolley gives it so much more functionality, though at $900 shipped, you can definitely make a strong argument for Bell's plate-loaded variation. Granted, the Adonis, no matter how you build it, is pricier than either Bell's option. And remember, you need some type of lateral bracing for the Adonis. Be it the brace, which adds $170 to the price, or you build out storage or bolt it to your rack. Against Prime's single stack, by the time you add on the low row footplate and seat, it gets pretty expensive even with code Gluck saving you 5%. See how I worked in that shameless self-promotion? Honestly, I just put the Pegasus seat on Prime's entire Prodigy line. Now, I will say, Rep imports their equipment and Prime is American made and their quality is incredible. So even though you're not getting multiple pulley ratios and may have to use a gym pin to add weight to the stack, they make phenomenal equipment. But it is still a big price difference that you'll have to factor in. Another very interesting American-made option is Rogue's upcoming CTM1. They've got the same 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 ratio with a trolley running down the center, and it's priced alarmingly close to Rep's. I know it's not out yet, but we'll be reviewing it, so subscribe so you don't miss that, because even though the Adonis is very good and Rogue has no answer to the Pegasus yet, it's still the only thing that gives me pause on recommending this without reservation. But let me know what you think. Which one would you pick, or maybe there's another option you'd like to see us review. Thank you to our Patreons, and thanks for watching.